watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines coming in this evening. First up, Trump's immigration crackdown hits India. A total of 205 Indian nationals who had illegally entered the U.S. have been deported on a U.S. military aircraft that took off from Texas earlier today, expected to land in India tomorrow morning. Trade war between U.S. and China intensifies. China levies 15% retaliatory tariffs on American goods, even in fact starts a probe against Google. What will be India's options, and is India best placed? We find out. Prime Minister Modi is all set to visit Washington next week. This will be the first meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump. What could be on the agenda? What will this mean for US-India ties? We decode. US State Department takes over Usaid. Secretary of State Marco Rubio now in charge of funds. Both Elon Musk and Donald Trump target the top US aid agency. In fact, Elon Musk says that President Trump has approved shutting down US aid. What will global trade look like under Trump 2.0? Will the global trade rules be rewritten? We find out in an exclusive chat with Saudi Arabia's trade minister. All right, our top story that we're tracking today on India Global is the flight carrying those Indians that are set to be deported back to India. There are over about 200 such Indians who've been identified. They've been vetted by American authorities and have been put on a plane. In fact, they have departed from Texas and are headed to India. Each deputy has been verified, as I said, and the move aligns with Donald Trump's larger agenda. His agenda, in fact, has immigration at the very center and heart of it. Remember, earlier, there have been military deportation flights to other countries as well. Let's get in Mohammad Ghazali to really talk to us about what this means. Who are these Indians? And is this the first set of what could be several such flights? Go ahead, Ghazali. You've been working the phones. Talk to us about what are your sources in the MEA telling you about this particular flight, and then we talk about the implications going forward.
Around 209 Indian nationals who are declared illegal immigrants in the United States have been deported from the United States, and they will be landing in Amritsar in Punjab tomorrow morning at around 9 a.m. And once they land, their documents will be verified, because this was exactly what Dr. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, during his last visit to the United States last month said, that India's stand on illegal immigration is very clear, that though we support migration and mobility of people to other nations and other countries looking for work opportunities, and world is a global workplace, but anybody who is involved or who is adopting this illegal immigration or illegal practices to reach some other country and look for work or stay there, India doesn't support that. And that is why what we are being told, that this deportation has perhaps been in the knowledge of the Indian government before these people were sort of opted or sort of sent back to India, before they were put on that immigration list. It was conveyed to the Indian government as well that there are around 18,000 illegal Indian immigrants staying in the United States, and out of those around 209 have been sent back by United States, who will be landing in India in Punjab's Amritsar district tomorrow morning by 9 a.m. So this yet again brings back the focus to the kind of illegal immigration we see from our own country, people moving to other countries through donkey route, through illegal means, going via these registered and unregistered travel agents who facilitate this kind of migration of people from different states. And Punjab and Gujarat and some other states have reported these incidents. We have also been told by local sources that after Mr. Trump came to office, another set of Indian illegal immigrants have been deported earlier as well in the last 1 week. Some were from Haryana, some were from Punjab. The exact number of those who were sent back before this flight is not yet known, but tomorrow at around 9 a.m. more than 209 people will be landing in India, after which the immigration will check their documents, because Dr. Jaishankar had said that once these illegal immigrants, if deported from United States, once they come back to India, their documents will be verified and only then they will be let to go.
Indeed, that's a very important but a complicated process because, you know, when you are in the US, you would rather say you are Indian than say a Pakistani or a Bangladeshi or a Sri Lankan. That's just a fact. And also simply from a basic point of view, it's kind of difficult to identify whether someone is Indian or could be from any of the neighboring countries as well, due to several ethnic factors. In fact, stay with us, Ghazali, because I want to address the other important story as well, which is really at the center of what could be the US-India ties, which is Prime Minister Modi's first trip to Washington after President Trump has taken over. This will be the first meeting between the two leaders. The 45th and the 47th President of the United States, as Donald Trump, is set to meet Prime Minister Modi in Washington, D.C. between the 12th and the 14th of February. It could be just after PM Modi's visit to Paris, where he's there for the Global AI Summit, and then he could just carry on. That's what the source-based information is, and then he would just carry on from there further on and meet President Trump. He'd announced this earlier. Remember, President Trump had announced this. There was nothing in the readout, but he had made this announcement. And then, of course, it's happening at a very short period of time. All right, Mohammad Ghazali, the fact is this comes in less than a month of President Trump taking over. This visit, there is a lot on the table. You've been talking to your sources in the MEA. What are they telling you? What could be the top 2 or 3 focus areas in that entire visit?
Gaurie, see, the significance of this meeting or the timing of the meeting can be gauged from the fact that Mr. Trump has invited a couple of other leaders before Mr. Modi reaches Washington and meets him. Netanyahu is there. Israeli Prime Minister is scheduled to meet him today. And in a couple of days from now, we will see Jordan's king also visiting the United States and meeting him. That shows that the conflict in one part of the world certainly is priority for Mr. Trump to resolve. And that is why he has invited Netanyahu, he has invited Jordan's king, King Abdullah III, for the meeting. But inviting Prime Minister Modi, a leader, or India claiming to be the leader of the global south, certainly sends out a message in our neighborhood as well, that what kind of relations we do have with United States and also with the new administration under Mr. Trump. And though Mr. Trump has also said that he will be speaking to Chinese President Xi Jinping, that conversation has not yet happened, or that has not been reported as of now. Now, when it comes to what are the issues which are going to be discussed when Mr. Modi meets Mr. Trump, certainly on top of it would be the illegal immigration issue, because that is hitting the headlines. The second would be the aid which Mr. Trump has sort of frozen or halted for all the other agencies which work in different countries, which work for humanitarian issues, and like Usaid works in India as well, and it works in many other countries. And then there is a growing concern among the humanitarian organizations that how cutting fund to those organizations will impact their services in other countries. Illegal immigration is one. The second is going to be that how to revive those, you can say that those initiatives which Mr. Trump took in his first presidency when it comes to India, because Quad was he was one of the author of Quad, or architect of Quad, by involving India with Japan and Australia and other partners. And it also shows because one of his aides in the in the cabinet or say in his administration has been advocating that India should also be given the status of those allies of US at par with Japan, at par with Israel or other developing nations or developed nations. So these are some issues which will certainly be discussed when Mr. Modi meets Mr. Trump.
Right, indeed. Thanks much for breaking that down for us viewers. The fact is that when you talk about this relationship, it's extremely important, and there could be, as Ghazali was mentioning, immigration being one issue. And the important thing to note here is the fact that India is accommodating of President Trump's clear directives when it comes to illegal deportation should be put to an end is a very important step that needs to be kept in mind. It's almost it's a step that makes way for talks to be held in a manner that is conducive for both India and US. The second important fact that India has cut down duties on Harley-Davidson bikes ahead of a meeting which will not just be focused on immigration, but trade is another very important aspect towards a conducive conversation that will pave the way for what could be a very consequential US-India partnership. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back with lots more news on the other side, including the US-China trade war, and is it advantage India? Stay with us. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's now turn our attention to the other big story that we are tracking, which is the US-China trade war. Believe it or not, in just about a fortnight of being in office, there are now trade wars, more than one, that are happening with America at the very center of it. What has happened is that President Trump, in fact, imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese goods. China has retaliated for that. There's now a 15% tariff that has been imposed by China on US coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% on oil and agricultural equipment. And regulators, of course, have opened investigations into Google. Which side is it going to go? How much will both sides intensify before they start winding down some of these tariffs and sit on the negotiating table to try and find some sort of a middle ground? Remember, you're not talking about small numbers, really large numbers, given the fact that China is one of the largest trade partners for America. This report tells you how significant these numbers could be when you add them up because of the scale at which both US and China trade with each other. And when we come back and talk more about the India impact of that.
A new trade war has broken out between Uncle Sam and the Asian dragon. As US tariffs on all Chinese goods come into force on Tuesday, Beijing swiftly announced retaliatory tariffs on some American goods. The Chinese tariffs, which are due to begin on Monday, would put a 15% import tax on US coal and liquefied natural gas. There will also be 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery, and some sports cars. That's not all, as China has also filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization and opened an antitrust probe into tech giant Google. Though China's response seems to be on par with that of the US, experts suggest it is only a mild reaction. When Trump launched the first of many rounds of tariffs targeting Chinese imports in 2018, Beijing declared that it was not afraid of a trade war. It's a different story this time, owing to China's sluggish economy. The tariffs are expected to hurt, especially because a slew of import taxes had already been imposed by the first Trump administration. On the other hand, the Chinese economy is not as reliant on the US as it was a few years ago, as Beijing has strengthened its trade agreements across the world. China is now the largest trading partner of more than 120 countries. On the same day, Trump signed an executive order to delay imposing tariffs on products from Mexico and Canada for a 30-day period. This followed talks earlier in the day with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. China will be concerned about the trade war owing to its slowing economy, but will be looking to use the opportunity to expand its global influence. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, let's now decode what does this mean for India and how much of an advantage it is for India. Let's get in Trin Nguyen, who is a senior economist at Natixis. She joins me from Hong Kong. Good to have you on the show, Trin. Let me first start by asking you, how do you think, or how big do you think this US-China trade war really is?
U.S.-China relations have deteriorated over the years, and even under it started obviously with President in 2017 with the trade war, continuing with President Biden, and today started again with the effective of the 10% higher tariffs, which is slightly better than what was said during the campaign, which was 60%. Irrespective of what the outcome would be, whether or not there will be a deal to halt this, we do think that the relationship between the two countries are deteriorating. It's likely to deteriorate in a more gradual manner than a rapid manner. What that means is that if you look at President Trump's 10% tariffs on China, which was much less than what was imposed onto Canada that was postponed, is that it gives a lot of room to also negotiate. And today, China's retaliation is quite measured. The measured response is to say that there is much more room for China to retaliate, but it also to give space for it to also de-escalate the situation and give pause. So in other words, it means that U.S.-China trade relationship is deteriorating, and it has been deteriorating. And that isn't just about tariffs and merchandise trade, but it is also relating to investment, right? Let's not forget that under President Biden, a lot of investment curbs have increased.
All right. But let me now come to the India impact. How much do you think this will put India at an advantageous position?
Right. So regarding India, India has been a key beneficiary of the U.S.-China trade war. Let's not forget there are some things that happen in between. So not only do we have higher tariffs under President Trump 1.0, which were partially paused under the deals, but then when President Biden came into office, that escalated further. Secondly, within China, there's a lot of regulatory that impose on the country itself. And as a result, India has been a beneficiary for portfolio investment, right? Two key areas of investments have been made. One is on equities. The second, of course, as you know, is bonds. India was included in the JPM index as a result of Russia being kicked out because of the Ukraine war. And other indices are increasing its exposure to the Indian market. What that means is that India is receiving lots of passive flows. FDI has also increased, but it's been much lesser extent. The key here is that India has been receiving, whereas has always been rather competitive, which is on the service sector, the IT sector. For manufacturing, it has improved, but there's still a lot more room for Indian manufacturing to improve. Of course, under the Modi government, there has been a lot of improvement.
Okay, so that is one aspect. But, are we then moving towards a higher tariff regime, given the protectionist tendencies around the world?
Well, one of the policies we can take away from the budget that came out over the weekend for India is that the Modi government took a preemptive stance to say, listen, we do have a lot of import tariffs, particularly on the U.S., so let's reduce a lot of barriers to trade to the U.S. to avoid being a crosshair of trade war. India was never a target, but by doing that, I think the Modi government is saying that it is trying to position itself as a beneficiary of this. And moreover, I do think that India could be much more open to trade, right? One thing to say is that while tariffs are going up between the U.S. and China, both countries generally have relatively low tariffs. The U.S. as an effective tariff regime is rather low. It's been very targeted in terms of certain areas and certain countries, but overall much more open to trade. And you can see that in the actual numbers of trade relationships, right? In India, I do think that will be much more emphasized. That it must be much more competitive in the global marketplace. There is an opportunity right now for India to tap into the higher friction between the U.S. China. Whether or not it will be U.S., EU, and so on and so forth, by staying out of the crosshair of fire is not enough, right? It would need to do more to also boost competitiveness onshore. One area that you can see that India is not competitive in manufacturing is really its trade relationship with China. India has a significant trade deficit with China. And one of the key arguments for the Indian government to not enter into trade negotiations and trade liberalization is to say, well, this just serves as a backdoor for China goods to enter India and then to be re-export. And we're not going to be able to move up the value chain.
All right, that's an important insight, Trinidad. Thank you so much for taking out the time to decode this. The big takeaway, of course, is that India is at an advantageous position when it comes to the US-China trade war. All right, shifting focus now to the other important story that we're tracking, which is the fact that, Donald Trump, in his typical transactional style, has said that he's going to continue aid to Ukraine, but in return for ensuring that he gets continued access and guarantee as far as supply of critical minerals is concerned. Something that a lot of European leaders, led by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, have criticized heavily, saying that these kind of arrangements should typically happen after the Ukraine-Russia war has been settled into. The Ukrainian President Zelensky had floated such an idea last October as part of his victory plan when he thought that he would end the war with Russia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet with President Donald Trump in Washington. Netanyahu's visit makes him the first foreign leader to meet Trump since his inauguration on the 20th of January. At the top of their agenda is negotiating the second phase of the Israeli hostage deal. While Donald Trump has taken credit for pressurizing both Hamas and Israel into last month's ceasefire and hostage agreement, he remains cautious about its long-term viability, stating there are no guarantees that peace will hold. Their meeting comes just as indirect negotiations are set to resume this week between Israel and Hamas on the second stage of the Gaza truce. The two leaders are also expected to hold a joint press conference. The leaders are also expected to discuss a long-sought Israel-Saudi Arabia normalization deal and growing concerns over Iran's nuclear program.
Do you still have doubts that the ceasefire will hold?
On what?
On the Middle East, do you think the ceasefire will hold?
I have no assurances that it'll hold. I mean, I've seen people brutalized. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. No, I have no guarantees that the peace is going to hold. Steve, you might want to say something about that. Steve Woodruff.
India and Indonesia are reportedly in the final stages of negotiating a 3,800 crore rupee deal for the export of BrahMos missiles. If signed, Indonesia will become the second ASEAN country after the Philippines to acquire this missile system. During Indonesian President Subianto's recent visit to New Delhi last month, where he was the guest of honor at India's Republic Day, reports suggest he met with BrahMos CEO Mr. Joshi, while a high-level delegation led by Indonesian Navy Chief Admiral Muhammad Ali also visited the BrahMos facility. Experts believe this move is part of Indonesia's broader strategy to enhance its naval power, modernize its military amidst growing security concerns related to China's territorial ambitions and assertiveness in the region. Pakistan's imprisoned former Prime Minister Imran Khan has written a letter to the Army Chief General Asim Munir criticizing the military's policies. In his letter sent from Adiala jail in Rawalpindi, Khan urges a reassessment of the military's approach to national security and governance. Khan expressed concern over the growing rift between the army and the public, warning that this divide could have serious consequences. As per the leadership of the party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the letter highlights key national issues and calls for greater unity between the people and armed forces. Quoting Imran Khan, Barrister Gaurie Ali Khan said the Pakistani army is making significant sacrifices. He added that both the country and the army belong to the people, stressing that PTI does not want chaos and it is crucial for the public to support the army. He reiterated that Imran Khan's message emphasizes fostering national unity. All right, with that, we're slipping into a very short break. We come back with more stories on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. We now turn our attention to the other big story that we are tracking, which is, well, the United States under President Trump has shut Usaid, a key organization of the US State Department, which was essentially providing aid to global institutions and organizations around the world. And now Secretary of State Marco Rubio has taken control of the Usaid, vowing to end what he calls the agency's defiance of Trump's agenda. Rubio appointed Trump loyalist Pete Marocco as the acting administrator, who also oversees foreign assistance at the State Department and has been accused by aid groups of deliberately dismantling the Usaid organization. Well, the shakeup comes after Elon Musk called it a criminal organization and sought its closure. Democrats argue that dissolving a federal agency without congressional approval would be illegal. Listen in to what Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say.
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest.
President Trump directed his corrupt billionaire friend, Elon Musk, to ransack a critical agency of the U.S. government. Musk and his band of unelected acolytes at DOJ have locked out USAID employees from their offices improperly accessed highly classified information, purged the agency of its nonpartisan leadership, and thrown the agency into chaos through a concerted campaign of harassment and intimidation of its employees.
All right, let's get in my colleague Disha Bagchi to talk to us about, well, we heard the politics of this, Disha, but talk to us about what this really means from an impact point of view, in terms of any numbers that you could share with us.
Right, Gaurie. So just to give our viewers a little bit of context as to what Usaid actually is, it's in fact an international humanitarian organization. It's an extension of what the US government's role and actions across the globe. They fund NGOs, fund foreign governments and their programs related to health, literacy, education, etc. So now when it comes to the impact really, as you mentioned, Donald Trump has blocked and frozen all funding for 90 days to not just the Usaid organization, but various other federal systems. Now, already within the US itself, to talk about the impact, the Usaid workers are not being allowed to enter the offices, and there's been massive protests outside their offices. And you can, as you Ian saw, the Democrat senator talking about the kind of impact that Trump's actions to freeze funds will have. Now, when it comes to India, the Usaid organization also had been working in India for over 70 years, and they had been funding a lot of government programs and backing a lot of government programs, including the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Now, when it comes to just last year alone, when it comes to funding basic health, the Usaid gave almost $42.9 million, almost $43 million. When it comes to children's health, it was about $21 million. So you can see quite extensive funding to various key sectors. Even when it comes to healthcare, almost $12 million. So quite an extensive impact this could have now on all these various key sectors in India. So it's really a wait and watch to see, because while Elon Musk has said that his Doge is essentially trying to cut excessive federal spending, this could have an extensive impact not just to India but across the globe.
Across the world, absolutely, absolutely. Disha, thanks much for breaking that down for us and providing our viewers the context and the numbers needed to understand this story. On that note, well, we slip into a very short break. On the other side is an exclusive conversation with Saudi Trade Minister, a conversation that's important at a time when global trade is really being rewritten in terms of its rules given Donald Trump's administration. Take a look at that after this very short break. Hello and welcome to a very special conversation that we are having at a time when India-Saudi Arabia relations have been rising on all parameters. 360-degree increase has happened in the India-Saudi Arabia relationship. And who better to explain that than the Minister of Industry and Mining joining me for a live conversation. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Bandraul Kharif, I hope I got your spelling right, sir. Pardon me if I didn't get the pronunciation right. Thank you so much for speaking to me on NDTV. Let me start by asking you, what brings you here?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in India representing my country of Saudi Arabia and my government. Well, what brings me here is you have a great country, and we, as you rightly said in the beginning of this interview, that the relationship today between the two countries is very unique, and it puts a lot of pressure for us on different sectors really to benefit and capitalize on this relation. I think in addition definitely to the great relation between the leaders, but I think we enjoy also a great relationship between the business community in the two countries as well as people also.
The bilateral trade has risen substantially. It's about $44 billion, and it's seen a huge increase in the last 3-4 years. As someone who has a bird's eye view of the bilateral trade, let me start by asking you, how do you see this growth and where do you see it coming from?
I think that's a very important element, and we see definitely this as a very positive part. But what I think is very interesting is also the quality of the trade mix, which is more and more developing in sustainable business and really bringing synergies between the two countries. And one of the components, for example, is fertilizers, where Saudi Arabia fertilizers exports have grown in the last few years and will continue to grow as a result of also the agricultural activities here in India. And we are really very happy to see that we are contributing to a very important sector in India, which is agriculture, which affects a great number of people here in the country. So, in addition to the growth of the numbers, I think the quality also is improving, and in this kind of volumes, we have to be very mindful of also not forgetting small activities that may be very small today, but they have the potential to grow. And I'm very keen, for example, on technology. India is a great place for technology, for ideas, for entrepreneurs, and we see a lot of synergies that can happen between the two countries, especially in the industry. We plan to build our industrial base on, for industrial revolution, AI, 3D printing, additive manufacturing, and so on. And there's a lot of activities that can be brought from India, hardware, software, talent, and so on.
This also comes at a time when Saudi Arabia is also looking to sort of divest and, from its energy focus or from its traditional focus. Where do you see the partnerships with Indian business happening? And, we're speaking at a time when Indian companies have also risen substantially, right? There are now 3,000 plus companies that are there in KSA. Talk to us about where do you see these partnerships coming and aligning with your government's vision of 2030?
It's growing very well. We see a great interest from private sector here in India, and it's across the board, from the large corporates to the very, SMEs and entrepreneurs. I think it's our job to explain exactly what we are looking for, where is our focus. So we talk with private sector today. I'm having also a roundtable with private sector to explain to them our strategy in industry, where are the different sectors that we are focusing, where we see that we can work with Indian companies, where are the opportunities in the value chains in different sectors. In mining also, India has mining activities for decades, and we are only starting, and there's a lot to share knowledge and to learn, because mining, for example, is an area where we need a lot of capabilities. So mining services, mining companies, equipment, technology, and so on and so forth. In addition to the knowledge about the sector itself, from geological survey to exploration and so on. So we try to reach out to the private sector in India to explain, and of course we receive a lot of private sector in Saudi Arabia. I think one of the largest delegations normally I meet is from India, and it shows really the great interest. It is our duty to explain to them our direction, but also to give them access to the different enablements that we have and different packages that makes their journey of investment or capturing, the potential that we have in Saudi as easy as possible.
Your leader is known to be someone who is embracing technology. The world's future growth is going to be led to a large extent by technology. Of course, you have the old world manufacturing apparatus that will continue, but technology will play a very important role. Where do you see the India-Saudi Arabia partnership from a technology point of view, especially given the inroads and progress that India has made when it comes to AI, deep tech, and so on and so forth?
Well, I see it from three angles. One is you have technologies that are already mature and stable, well tested. It's very easy to bring these technologies into different activities in Saudi Arabia. And we have today, for example, in the ministry, we have a program called Future Factories Program, where we incentivize manufacturing capabilities and companies to adopt new technologies. And we are offering incentives and financing and training for them. The second pillar, I think, is when it comes to the joint ventures in certain activities where we can scale up different technologies, not only for Saudi market, but also for a global
setting
presence.
up scalable technologies.
Scalable technologies. And third, I think Saudi Arabia is a great place for entrepreneurs and ideas to be developed also, where they can have easy access to a lot of large companies to test their technology, to endorse their technology. And as you know, entrepreneurs, they need two things. They need money, investment, but they need also piloting and proof of concept. And Saudi Arabia offers a great deal of opportunities and ecosystem to allow for this.
Anything for Indian startups, whether it is in terms of like a special MOU or like a fund, you mentioned, incubating startups. Anything for Indian startups?
Today, the regulation of Saudi allows for all of the enablements that are there are offered for Saudis and non-Saudis. So Indians can come as long as they register in Saudi. They will have full access to all of the different enablers, including incubators that in different sectors. We have various incubators in different subsectors. Also incentives, helping them to, as I mentioned earlier, to connect with private sector, with large government entities, or with large state-owned companies to pilot and test, access to research institutions who have their own programs in developing different ideas and components.
We are having this conversation at a time when probably the globalized trade world as one knew it is undergoing a shift. President Trump is leading that shift. We are seeing that almost not even at a daily basis, but at an hourly basis. What's happening with Canada, Mexico, Colombia, all that. As someone who's driving trade partnerships for Saudi Arabia around the world, how do you see the change that has taken place or is set to take place in terms of how bilateral trade relationships will now have to be forged?
It's very hard to predict, really. It's, as you rightly said, it's so many moving parts at the same time. Eventually, I think, things will really fall into place when it comes to different capabilities will continue to be, judged as competitive, how competitive. Logistics play a big role. But definitely, we need some change. We have seen what COVID have shown us a big lesson of the disruption that we have seen. The war between Russia and Ukraine also showed how vulnerable many of the activities are. So, but eventually, at the end of the day, competitiveness will continue to be important. Scale will continue to be somewhat also important. I'm not a big fan of barriers and protection. Saudi Arabia is a very open market. For example, today our average custom duty is less than 5%, which is negligible, to be honest with you. So, but nevertheless, we have been successful in competing in different activities because we have the right ingredients to be competitive, and we will continue to be competitive in this.
But this comes, an average of 5% duty would actually make President Trump very happy, given the fact that he wants to bring down tariffs for other countries and put tariffs for America. But is there a rising protectionist tendency that's happening around the world? Because, it's not just President Trump alone. You're seeing some parts of that also happening in Europe. Several leaders there are also saying the same thing. Given the fact that there are now trade wars that's happening. As we speak, China has said that it's going to now probe Google because it's tit for tat trade practices that are taking place. How does the present globalized trade world exist when there are trade wars happening?
Again, I think it's a very complicated situation. I'm a great believer that policy of protection and barriers is not the right direction. Nevertheless, I think it's very important to focus on fair competition. This is really what we believe in Saudi, and today the way we have been able to be successful in some of the products that we export, even outside our oil and petrochemical, it's because of our competitiveness. It's because there is an added value that we can bring as a nation, be it in our location. We sit in a very also strategic location where we can connect with different countries. The infrastructure that we have been able to build in the last years, and also I would say the mix between having access to raw material, to the energy competitiveness, to the talent and expertise, know-how that we can access. So it's a combination of different things. So I think countries should focus more and more towards fair competition and really fight unfair treatments that are in the form of, for example, dumping or incentives that are unfair or create really the unbalance. But I think time will show that things will fall into the right place. I want to add also, in the last 15 years, we have seen a shift in technology that allows small even economies and markets to host and be home for different capabilities in manufacturing. So we moved in some activities from scale to more tailor-made, more custom products that need to be closer to customers, and we have to allow the technologies, embrace them, so that we can balance between the large-scale manufacturing where cost can be very, very sensitive,
yes,
to localization.
Before we wrap this up, I have two important questions for you. One is the, we've spoken at length about the economic aspect of the India-Saudi Arabia relationship. There's also a larger strategic political aspect to this relationship, and it's really taken off, in terms of the partnership between the two. As someone who understands both these dimensions, how do you see that? There is this IMEC corridor, there is a greater presence of India in the region. It's also now becoming an important voice, if not a stakeholder, in the region. How do you see New Delhi's role in this entire region going forward?
Well, India is a main component of the region, and really, these ideas cannot come with a normal relation. It has to come with it has to be backed up by a great relation and common understanding. And I think also India appreciates Saudi Arabia's role in the region, aiming for stability and really doing its part of making sure that the region is stable, that we do our effort to ensure that economic development is being done in the right way to ensure that people in the region also see a bright future. So from that angle, I think I'm very confident that the two governments and two leaders do understand the importance of working together, and the different ideas will come as a result of this relation.
And finally, there's a very large diaspora of Indians in the Saudi Arabia. The last time I checked, it was upwards of 26 lakh people. That's a very large number. There have been some changes that have been made in the laws as well, in terms of, ensuring that they get better treatment there. As someone, I'm sure people who would be watching this, they would have their friends and family in working there in Saudi Arabia, given it's such a large number. It's also attracting a lot of Indians. Any message that you would like to give to people who would want to come there for work, looking for opportunities, whether as employment or as setting up businesses?
Well, the message is I can't stress the fact that we are so much alike. We just don't realize it. And I think Indian community in Saudi, the beauty about the community, it is a variety of different, from workers to professionals to investors. So that mix also creates a lot of stability, creates a lot of engagement with the Saudi people, and we welcome Indian people to come explore our country, enjoy it from all levels, from just coming as a visit or as a tourist, or coming to perform Hajj or Umrah, or coming for a longer period to explore opportunities, be it work opportunity or investment opportunity or entrepreneur opportunity.
Even on the religious side, there's now been a pact that has been agreed between India and Saudi Arabia, right? There's now a quota that has been given for Indians.
Absolutely, yes.
That's, I think, about upwards of about 175,000 that both leaders have appreciated for that. Yes, yes. Do you think that could also act as a bigger bond between the two countries?
Of course. I mean, it's again, I think we should not underestimate also the relation in the past has been very, very strong. I can tell you the beauty about the composition of the Indian people in Saudi is you have big investors who have invested in the country, believing in the country, in its future. You have professionals who are working in financial institutions, in academia, in healthcare, and so on. And you have also people who are working in manufacturing, and so that is very rare to find. You will, in different nationalities, you will see more concentration on one part than the others. I think with India, it's a great mix, which to me also shows that the country is appealing for Indians from all activities, and I'm very grateful for the contribution that India and Indian people have made to our country in the past 50, 60 years.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time and speaking to me on NDTV. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.